At that point, the GM said, whenever you hear your name in rumors, that means you're not going anywhere. When you don't hear your name, that means you're getting traded. So I thought that was that. I mean, it's interesting, and I tell that to people now, and it's 100% true. You always hear your name out there, but that doesn't mean that's ever going to happen. So, obviously, get my cast. I had a cast on for 12 weeks. It broke my leg pretty good, the line drive by Molitor. So then they called back. Herc Robinson's GM called back again just before the start of the playoffs and said, "Hey, would you accept the trade to the at that point California Angels?" And I said, "Yeah," because I was living out there. My oldest daughter was going to school, kindergarten, and so I used to see all those guys over the years when they would lived, played in the city, but their family lived in another city. I saw how hard that was on everybody, the player, the family, the kids. I said, you know what? Something out there was telling me to accept it. So as hard as it was to leave KC, I decided, you know what, I'm going to give it a run with the Angels. It was our arch rival for years with the Angels, with the Royals. So it was kind of, I knew the guys, I knew the stadium. I live, 45 minutes away from the stadium. So I think, you know what, if I'm going to be traded and I'm going to accept the trade, there's no other place I would rather be than with the Angels. And, actually, even though I didn't pitch well for them, and it's still to this day, it's my one regret in my career that I didn't pitch well for them because I tried everything I could. I was pitching, just really basically got my cast off my leg, and I'm throwing for those guys. It worked out great all winter long, and spring training I'm throwing as good as I had ever thrown in a long, long time. And we were doing a running drill, and one of the guys that I got to know, we were messing around. He stops in front of me, and I slipped, and then I tried to balance or land the right way, and I put my right arm down, and boom, it popped the shoulder out, and that was
Wow.
it tore one of the two ligaments in my shoulder. I kept trying to go through that one too, but I went from throwing say 91, 92, first day of spring camp, and the next time I'm throwing like 73, 74, and I knew something was bad at that point. So I'm like, man, I got to do whatever it takes to try to perform for him. I went in and had surgery by the late great Dr. Yoakum, and he said, boy, looking at the MRI, it's not great. We might try some different type of surgery on it. You willing to do that? So I'm willing to do anything that can get me back out there because I owe it to the organization to pitch. So we did it, and I was throwing. I had surgery say like in May, and I'm already trying to pitch by August, which most people never even try when you have surgery on your shoulder.
Right.
It's usually anywhere between 9 months and 12 months. But I'm throwing, and I felt incredibly good throwing flat ground. But then the first pitch I threw on the incline of the mound, it felt like somebody put one of those ice pick knives right through the back of my shoulder. And I was like, oh. And so they go a rehab assignment in Rancho Cucamonga. And I remember all these young players, A-ball players, were just turning on everything and crushing everything I threw. I knew in my mind, I'm like, this is it. I don't think I could do it. Especially after my last game on the mound, I already had the mindset that I thought I was done because I remember seeing Garrett Anderson. I walked off the field in Cleveland, and he looked at me and he nodded his head, and I nodded my head almost like, I know I'm done. And, because many players have told me as a pitcher, the hitters will let you know when you're done. At that point in my mind, I said, yeah, I'm done. I'm going to exhaust everything I can physically and mentally to play. But when the hitters are just hitting every one of your pitches, then that means you're done.
Right. Tell me, you came up to the major leagues. You're 21 years old. That's a lot of fun through the years. You mentioned your daughter. Tell me the story of being a single guy and then not being a single guy as a Major League Baseball player.
Yeah, I mean, it was funny because George Brett always tells a story, like, because when I lived with him, Brett Sabering and I both lived with George the first few weeks of our careers in '84, and he eventually found us a really nice condo for us to live there in the Country Club Plaza area of Kansas City. But, he'd say all the jokes, like Says was having fun and doing all this stuff. And he says, all I could see here is Mark doing push-ups and sit-ups up in the room. And I would go downstairs. I said, Mr. Brett, can I use your phone? And he goes, come on, man. Whenever you need the phone, use it. Or can I get a glass of water or any of these things? I was trying to be as respectful as possible. So my drive was, I wasn't going to miss this opportunity. I didn't go crazy on, going out at night and all the other stuff. I was just driven to do something I thought that not a whole lot of people did from the area I grew up in, especially in the environment I grew up in. I was like, you know what, I'm going to do something that's going to be pretty spectacular, and that means pitching the big leagues, and I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it for a long time if I can. And I wasn't going to be able to do that if I went crazy, and so I was just focused. So nothing really, out there where I put myself in a bad position. And I met my wife at the end of that year, a would-be wife, it was at Saberhagen's first wife's weddings, and I met her, and I was like the old saying, and I met her at a wedding, and it was actually true. And we met, and I still remember September 14th, 1984. I got engaged September 14th, 1985, and then we got married in November of 1986. So it was probably the best thing that I did, besides the fact we're best buds and we have 3 kids together. But it kept me from being that person that everyone thought, why aren't you going out here? Why aren't you doing this and all that stuff? So then I can be focused on just being a great husband as much as I can, and being the best baseball player I could be.
There were a lot of disappointed girls out there, Mark, weren't there?
You know what? I had some friends, but I wasn't crazy about. I wasn't crazy because, like I said, I just didn't want to ever put myself in a position where, I didn't really go out with a whole lot of people even when I was growing up in Philly, because, like, again, I was so focused on school and everything like that, and forming all the sports. At that point, even at Penn Charter, the first 2 years I played football, but I loved basketball. I actually loved basketball better than I loved baseball. But you just didn't have enough time. I didn't have any. Bottom line is, I always said I didn't have any. I know I never went to any proms. I didn't go to my own. It was an all boys school, but we had proms, and I know I was asked a couple times, but I didn't really even answer the phone because I didn't have a driver's license until I was actually drafted. When I was drafted, I actually bought a car before I even had a driver's license, because I walked everywhere. My dad said, if you want to drive, you got to be able to pay for your auto insurance, in which that was about like $2,300 a year, and I had like 3 cents to my name, so I never drove. Didn't have to drive, and I didn't have any, like, I had hand-me-down clothes and all this other stuff, so I never went to any proms and things like that. The high school I went to was an incredibly nice high school. I tried to run away from home when my dad said, we're going to send you to Penn Charter, because this school is like, it's a top end school in the country, and it's fairly expensive, and we didn't have the money to do it. So kind of my dad ended up working there. That's what coaching all the teams and stuff. So I said, I'm not going there, Dad. I won't fit in. He goes, all right. I said, what are you going to do? I said, I'm going to run away. So he brought me a suitcase down and from his closet in his bedroom, and I packed my clothes, walked about a block, and I said, well, I got nowhere to go. So I might as well go to the high school there, and it turned out to be the best thing for me, because I met a lot of people, and they were really nice to me. I'm thinking they're not going to be nice to me because they're driving, cars at 16. They got, shirts with a collar. I never had a shirt with a collar my whole life. So I got T-shirts and sneakers and jeans, we call dungarees or painter pants, that my brothers had. So they were always a little bit shorter than me because I was taller than them. So it was all those, but it made me who I am today. It made me appreciate everything that, somehow, some way that God has given me. So that's why I've always been so respected to people, and just any kind of thing that goes well in your life, or doesn't go well, you just kind of push forward. So that's why, I go back to when I traded to the Angels, and what would have happened if you said no, and maybe you would have stayed healthy, maybe to pitch more. I go, well, then I won't be in the position I am right now.
Yes, right.
Like going to the Angels, I want, who knows if I would ever had this opportunity. And they were great to me, and they had no business being great to me because I didn't do anything for them on the mound. But they saw something in me, and lo and behold, I started doing this business for a while ago, and I feel as much part of the organization now than as if I was a player.
What was the transition like, however? You would eventually, you've been with the Angels a long time as a broadcaster, and started broadcasting in other entities around 2000, but there's a few years lag in there. Was that a difficult transition? You knew you couldn't play baseball, but what was that like?
Yeah, it was odd. My first year out of it, so probably about 98 or 99, I think it was. So I was like, what am I going to do now? And so then, I think, let me think about maybe helping some kids out, coaching here and there. It's a guy, former major league player named Brett Barbary, got in contact with me, asked me if I wanted to help coach the travel ball team. I said, sure. So that was kind of fun. I started giving a few lessons, but then I started feeling weird. I didn't want anybody ever to pay me for that stuff. So it felt weird to, help give back to somebody and they were giving you money. So I can't do that. I'll just coach with you there. So I did that. And then, lo and behold, a couple of kids that were coaching the travel ball team were going into Chaminade High School, and their coach at that point, they would let him go, and then a couple of the parents said, "Hey, would you be willing to, be the head coach there for the baseball high school team?" I said, "Wow, I mean, it's a big commitment and all this stuff." And in the process of doing that, I get a couple calls from Fox Sports, and even ESPN called me about doing an audition for their Baseball Tonight show while I was on vacation. I couldn't make it, so they were like, "Oh, never mind then." But Fox Sports Net did, and I went and did an audition for a show called Baseball Today, and it was fun. I was with Steve Sachs and Ron Darling and I both got our start together, and obviously it turned out really well for Ronnie too. But here I am. Then all of a sudden I got that going, and I told when I did I'm going to have a conversation with the principal and the dean of the school at Chaminade. I said, I think I'm in the process of maybe I'm doing some other little things. I don't know how much of a full-time commitment I can give. So I would feel bad if you decided to hire me. So and then they go, nope, we'll work around you, because one of the assistant coaches who was there before agreed to be on board with me, and we became great friends and still are. So here I am, the head coach of Chaminade, pretty quick out of the game, and boy, I loved it. I love that, being the head coach. I'm, coaching third base, doing all the signs, sending people home, holding on people, making pitching changes, doing it all myself. It was great. I'm coaching against people like Trevor Plouffe and a bunch of other major league players that over the years I've coached against, and going down in these tournaments and going against Garrett Cole when he was at Orange Lutheran, and all that. It was so much fun. And I was back to being so the competitive juices were there, but yet I'm still doing a radio show at late shift. I'm like, it's called wrapping up all the baseball games from SoCal, from the Angels and Dodgers. And that was, about a half hour or 45 minutes away from my house. So I'm doing that at 10 o'clock to 1 in the morning. And then going to coaching. And lo and behold, I went into now doing, pre and post game shows for the Angels and Dodgers at Staples Center at that point when they had a studio there. So I'm like, and I'm going down to downtown LA in my Chaminade High School baseball uniform, carrying my suit on my back, trying to run in there. So it was like constant work, but everyone kept saying you can't say no. So it was almost the same way as a player to anything they ask you to do. So I'm doing that, coaching. So this is like 7 days a week. Felt like 10 hours a day, all this, but in the end, it was the hard work and doing radio, learning how to do, cut highlights, talk to and set up, calls with players like, Johnny Bench or Jim Palmer, or have Chris Berman on there. I did an interview with Larry King before, and I set all that up basically almost all myself. So it was a learning experience. I learned all the groundwork you need to do this stuff, and then I'm at a holiday party from all this stuff at that point. Fox Sports, and our boss there goes, "Hey, would you be interested in doing 50 games as a color analyst with the Angels?" And I'm like, I didn't, obviously you can't even say, yeah, let me think about it. It's like, okay. And I agreed to it, but even before I got home to tell my wife, she goes, "So you're back to traveling again?" I'm like, I said, "What am I supposed to do? I mean, you can't say no. It's a great opportunity." And she goes, "No. I've known you. That's been your life. I mean, you love the game and this and that." So she was in agreement with me, and I went from 50 games to 95 games the next year to the third year where I was doing them all. So, and here I am 16 years later doing something I absolutely love. My prep for these things and getting ready for games is almost feel like I'm getting ready to pitch a game too. So, every time I do a game, I know all the ins and outs. I make first guess. Everyone jokes around, calls me Tony Romo of baseball. And you're not going to be right all the time, but I all the research and prep work I do, I always believe I have a good shot at figuring out what's going to happen before it even does, and I'm willing to stick my neck out for it. So I love what I'm doing right now, and if I hadn't accepted that trade to the Angels, I'm not doing this. So there's always some, somebody up there is guiding me, and I felt in the right direction. But maybe it was my dad, because my dad